Hey, are you in the scope of the CSRD and have a lot of different products to report on? In this podcast episode, I'm going to talk to Katharina, who's a sustainability manager at TAKKT AG, a wholesaler that has a whole bunch of different products. So she's talking about her experience on how to manage all the different data points and calculating, especially the Scope 3 emissions for the carbon calculation within the CSRD. So if you feel this relates to you, definitely check out this episode. Hey, Katharina, and first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company in which you work as a sustainability manager to get everybody on the same page?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for the invitation. Hi, I'm Katharina. I come from a mixed background. I started in science, actually in biology, and then I switched to bioeconomy. And now, as you mentioned, I work as a sustainability manager at TAKKT AG, and my work really revolves around everything related to climate. So I focus on carbon accounting, decarbonization strategies, and all the reporting and compliance connected to that area. And for my company, we are a holding company and we specialize in B2B trading of business equipment, mainly in Europe and North America. And you asked about the sustainability reports, right?
So maybe, because this is like the question that I'm trying to get to, but maybe to, just so that I get a better understanding, like what exactly does tech do? Like, can you give like a few examples of like what type of business you're working in?
Okay, because we sell business equipment in different divisions. So we supply, for example, big kitchens or if you packaging for your products or office furniture. So just if you're a business and you need equipment for doing your business activity, we have that covered.
Okay. And how did you get into this position as a sustainability manager? Is TAKKT already doing this for some time, or like how did you develop into this?
So I did an internship at TAKKT AG, and then I wrote my master thesis about decarbonization strategy that I developed for TAKKT AG. And they had quite a big focus on sustainability already. They published their first sustainability report in 2012, I think. And last year we actually won the German Sustainability Award, which I'm really proud about. But this year we are for the first time required to report after CSRD. So this year's sustainability report will be even bigger.
Okay. Well, but that sounds super interesting. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit? Because it sounds like that you have, or TAKKT has a lot of experience with sustainability reports. If you're already doing it for over a decade and now even won a prize for it, like what was the ambition in the beginning? What were the reports looking like so far? And now you're transitioning to CSRD. So did you already do a report that was like CSRD, or is this now then the first one?
Well, we didn't do a report in the scope of CSRD. We, for example, related to the carbon footprint, we calculated scope 1 and 2, but not scope 3. This will be the first time this year. And in the last years, there was a focus to always give the customers a sustainable option to purchase a product. So we have an internal sustainability rating called Enkelfähig, and we reported on that, for example, and then on our climate strategy and stuff. Like a normal non-CSRD sustainability report, I would say.
Okay. And can you maybe take us a little bit with you to like see the sustainability report from your point of view? Like, what are the specific challenges that come up for your company? How did you approach the CSRD? Like, what are the difficulties, or what are you working on the most?
Yeah, it's a huge project, and there are currently, a lot of companies face that problem at the moment. I think that there aren't really processes in place to track the data that is needed for the CSRD. So first we try to get an overview of what is required, and then we set up individual project teams to tackle, for example, the social components of the CSRD. I'm doing everything related to climate, and my colleague is trying to keep everyone on the same page and on board and has an overview of all the different work streams that are happening at the same time.
Okay. And so how are you approaching the CSRD? Do you use software for this? Do you use Excel? Do you have like consulting? Just maybe as a quick overview to see how are you approaching the topic? Because I feel like a lot of companies are in front of that question.
Yeah, so we don't have an external consultancy. We do everything internally, but we do use two different softwares, one for the reporting and one for the CO2 calculations.
And giving your company, what would you say are the biggest challenges that come up? Like, what do you spend the most time on? What is difficult to solve in regards to the CSRD?
Yes, so I think that sustainability is a really data-driven field, and that is really becoming obvious through CSRD. So, and it's especially true for the carbon footprint, where I'm working at the moment. So, there are related problems that arise regarding the data part of the CSRD. So, first identifying which data is actually needed, the data collection process, because a lot of people are involved in that, and data availability. As I mentioned, a lot of the data hasn't been requested in the years before, so we have to find ways where to locate the data, and also data quality and working with data gaps as well.
Okay. And what are different approaches that you have regarding the whole data topic? Because I can completely understand, and I see that a lot of companies, they are just struggling with not having the right data. And if they have some data, it's difficult to like put it into the right framework. So how do you approach the whole mess of data challenge that there is?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for us, we work with around, I don't know, 20 to 30 million data points that need to be converted into emission factors. And we also have some data gaps that we have to come up with assumptions and to find, workarounds that reflect reality as much as possible. So the first point would be to manage the data. I would suggest that, or for us, it was a big help to find the right software solution. And I can only speak for my part for the carbon footprint, but there are so many solutions out there on the market right now, and everybody claims that they can calculate your carbon footprint in no time. But you have to be a little bit careful, because you have to find a software solution that fits your company profile. Because for us, for example, we sell whole products, and a lot of the emission factor databases that software solutions use have emission factors that match to materials, but we have several materials in our product. So working with these software solutions wouldn't work for us. So it was a really long process to find a good software partner, but now we have one, and we are really happy, and they help us also harmonize our data, extend our data with AI, for example. And yeah, that works really well for us.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting point that you just mentioned, that you have to like look at the emission factors and then know whether it's like for a whole product or for the material. So looking back, is that like, I'm just trying to say it very plainly, but is that a question I can just go to a solution provider to and ask them what they have the emission factors for, or how can I like approach this topic if I'm now in a similar situation?
Yeah, so first you have to know which calculation approach you are choosing. If you're doing everything on a spend-based approach, then you have to find a software solution that offers spend-based emission factors. Or if you're doing it on a material level, you have to find something on material level. If you want to calculate your transport emissions and you want to do it in a distance-based method, you have to find someone that is able to translate, if you have a starting point and end point, into a fixed emission at the end.
Okay, yeah. Please.
No, it's fine.
Okay. No, because I was also thinking about it, because for me, like the topic of emission factors sounds quite easy, because it's just like, oh yeah, you multiply it by the emission factor, and I'm like, okay, yeah, easy, I can do this, check. But then to like make sure that you have the right emission factors, that they differ depending on what calculation method you use, that's a very interesting topic. I have not thought about this before.
Yeah, it was a huge problem for us, actually.
Yeah. And this is then probably also enhanced because of the specific industry that you're in, like with the products that you have. And yeah, I feel like in wholesale business, this can like then happen more often, or is happening on a higher scale then.
Yeah, especially in wholesale and trading. I think, yeah, it becomes a problem because most of the companies that the guidelines are focused on, or the softwares are focused on, are on manufacturing companies. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other learnings like this that maybe just for wholesalers, but also maybe for broader scope of companies, which are like questions that you need to ask, but you only know to ask when you're already done the process? Like, do you have other topics like this that would be helpful recommendations?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in general, it's important to say that the scope 3 calculations, especially scope 3, will look very different from company to company. And it's really individual process, because there isn't just one blueprint that you can follow. And this is because scope 3 covers the whole supply chain in various categories, and which categories will be the biggest one for your company will highly depend on the business you're doing or the economy you're in. Because for us as a trading company, it's purchase products and transport, but for a fossil fuel company, it would look totally different. They would have probably use phase the biggest company. So it's really important to know from the beginning which categories to focus on, because also the auditors will have the most interest in these categories that are the biggest. So what we did is that we did a significance analysis of the scope 3 categories before even starting. So we plotted the categories by business relevance and influenceability to emission impact, or estimated emission impact. And so we knew which categories we need to focus on beforehand. And yeah, that also leads me to another important point, I think, because what was really a game changer for me was that I was suggested by the software we're working with together to set up a reporting guideline. So to really detail out everything that you're doing, your whole calculation framework, and just document everything from the beginning. Because, yeah, you need to have an overview of all your methodologies, the boundaries, and all the assumptions that you set. And that will make it also easier for the auditors to follow what you are doing, and hopefully make the whole auditing process way smoother.
Yeah, I can see how this makes a lot of sense, especially with like the broad scope of like different products and different things that need to be reported on. I can see that like having a guide for this is then very helpful to like get some overview and make the whole process a little bit easier. So for your company, and I feel like also because of the different, like the sustainability prize that you won and like all the efforts that you put in, I can see how there's like also an intrinsic motivation for doing more sustainability reporting. But what would you say, besides the like mandatory CSRD part, are there any other benefits to like calculating the carbon emissions in general, or also focusing on the scope 3? Because I feel like a lot of companies are reluctant to do that. Like they know it's like difficult homework that you don't want to do, but you kind of have to. So I'm looking for like more ways to incentivize companies to like, hey, this is actually like a good thing to do.
Yeah, I totally get the overwhelming feeling that companies might face when first looking into CSRD or carbon footprint calculation, because And I think it's really important to reflect on if it's really worthwhile to put so much energy in a reporting act like CSRD and the carbon footprint, because in the short term, it means the processes will probably be really tedious. You need a lot of energy, a lot of money, structural change even, but also at the same time, we are now facing 1.5 degree global warming, and that means for companies, they now have to prepare for a future that will probably look much different from the future that we are seeing today. New challenges, risks, opportunities, and the CSRD gives us a lot of clarity and transparency in that regard. So it's also really helpful for the companies to change the perspective, not only how they are impacting the environment, but also how the environment will impact them. And yeah, I think quantifying in terms of the carbon footprint is also really important, because it can be a starting point or a trigger of action to actually look into your data that you collected. You can get a lot of insights about what your business activity is and where the biggest hotspots are, where the biggest impact is. And we have to have some element that helps us focus our resources, and quantifying something like the company emissions puts then the company in a place where it can say, okay, I now can compare it to other companies. I have a perspective, and now I can act. Now I can actually do decarbonization measures, do decarbonization strategies, and find where I have the biggest impact.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I also feel like that right now, like companies are focusing on the difficult task, and I'm not taking anything away from this. Like it's very difficult. It's like tedious to like start with the CSRD, but I truly believe that when companies are actually like looking into this, it can also enable companies to like better position themselves and better set themselves for a future, like for a more sustainable future, hopefully, but also like very egoistically for like how can the company be better positioned in the future. So I think there are like a lot of advantages to it that we might not see right now if we have to like run after all the small data points that are annoying together.
Yeah, I think it's also really important to frame it in that way, that there are also, of course, we frame climate crisis in a negative light, but there are also opportunities for the companies. And it's also important for them to know where they can improve. And I think a business sense can then also follow, because they can integrate all the insights they get from CSRD into their internal management systems, strategic level, on investment level even. And yeah.
Yeah. So you have already given us a lot of like tips and recommendations from your experience, but maybe one more, like if you're looking back onto the whole work that you've done over the past year or past years, is there anything that you would say that was more difficult than you expected, where you were actually surprised, like, oh, I didn't know that this would take up so much time? Or maybe the other way around, that there was something that was easier than you expected, where you're like, oh, like there was a lot of fuss about it, but actually if you do it, like it's quite doable?
I think the auditing process takes a lot of time, and I didn't expect that, but they are doing it also for the first time. And they are asking us for all our assumptions to have kind of a proof. We cannot just say, oh, we assumed that, blah, blah. We have to find like papers or publications or official something that we rely our assumptions about. And yeah, maybe I can make an example, because for us, the use phase turned out to be quite the most complicated category, because we have 15 different companies with diverse portfolios, and we found that we have around 40,000 electric items. And then we were questioning ourselves, how do we calculate the use phase emissions of these 40,000 items? Because we would need expected lifetime of each product, use phase per day, and electric consumption data. And as you can imagine, that data doesn't live in the systems. It's not part of the onboarding of the product. And so we had to come up with assumptions, and we were doing the assumptions, and then the auditors were saying, no, you can not just claim that they are being used a few hours per day and so on. So what we did in that special case is that we grouped them all in product families and matched these product families with depreciation tables, for example, for the expected lifetime. And we then scanned papers and publications to really have a foundation for our assumptions. And we always opted for the most conservative way of looking or of assuming our use phase emissions. And we accept kind of that we, because of that, probably will have an overestimation of our emissions to some degree. But still, I think it's really important to note that this is the first year we're doing it. And I now look at the carbon footprint more like a first rough sketch, kind of. And the next years we can then look at where are our hotspots, where do we need to increase data quality, and then we can fill out the details in the sketch.
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes completely sense that like the whole auditing trail or the process like takes more time and effort. And yeah, then it depends on the details, right? Like how do you do this exactly? How can you prove that what you're saying is actually the case? But yeah, sounds complicated.
It is.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was like really insightful for me, and with the especially with the specific examples that you gave. Like I feel like I really was able to like dive into the topic and learn something new from that. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you as well.
If you've come this far, thank you so much for listening to the AtlasZero podcast. The goal of AtlasZero is to help companies to find the right sustainability solution. And we are really focused on all the EU compliance topics. We have a solution finder, we have an automated RFP process, and we also do a lot of consulting projects in this area. So if you're looking for a solution, make sure to reach out to us. And I have to ask this, please like and subscribe this podcast episode. It helps us a ton to reach more people. And at the end of the day, we really try to reach as many people as possible with our free content. So thank you very much. And I hope I see you very soon.